Let's see. Keith, want to check on Twitter?
Yeah.
Brent, LinkedIn? We're about.
All right, LinkedIn's up.
LinkedIn's up. Okay.
Twitter's up. Twitter is up.
Okay, Twitter is up. How about Facebook?
I don't see it. I'm having trouble with my
I ain't getting
Facebook. I think.
notifications.
Facebook.
Yeah, I got it. It just got it.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're streaming live on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube, hopefully. And we're about to start the Gillmor Gang on this Sunday, and it is the last day of July.
Right.
All right. Mute is off, and we're gonna go in 3, 2, 1, and
Hi, Steve Gillmor here. This is the Gillmor Gang. Okay,
yeah.
are we done?
Well,
Oh,
what day is it?
it's the last day in July and the first day of the collapse of the Republican Party. What?
Really? Wow.
Well, it's not going well. Let me introduce from the state of Atlanta, Georgia, or nearby, Brent Leary. Welcome, Brent.
Greetings and salutations too.
Do you have, could you just mention the passing of a great American?
Absolutely. I mean, just literally heard about this minutes before this started. The great Bill Russell. I mean, he is definitely one of my heroes growing up, and it wasn't really just because of what he did, on the court, which is the only person I know of that won 11 world championships in 13 years. And even before that, back-to-back college, won gold medals. I think he won high school. I mean, this dude was just a winner at all levels, but it wasn't just the fact that he was a winner. As a matter of fact, I hate the Celtics. I grew up in close to Philadelphia. So it's like, despite all that, he was a hero because of the man that he was. I mean, this guy, he didn't take a backseat to anybody. I mean, he was the best Boston Celtic there ever was, and he was probably treated the worst by the fans of Boston, that did unspeakable things to him and his family. And yet and still, he never took a backseat. He never backed down, and he won as the star. He was like the first head coach to win as a champion, and he stood up for every civil rights without blinking an eye. He was just a great man. So sorry to hear about his passing, and this was especially tough because my niece would have been 40 years old. She died 5 years ago. I didn't expect to get emotional like this, but
How are they related, Brent, in your head?
my niece was, just a great girl, great young lady, and her not being able to be 40 and then seen this news about Bill it was just something that made me think a lot about things and people. And so, yeah, I'm kind of a different state of mind today. But I'm glad to be here and glad to be talking with you guys, and I'm glad to be talking about things as, you know, life has to continue and things of that nature. But definitely a little different kind of Sunday.
Well, thank you for sharing. Also from the framework of Massachusetts is Dennis Pombriant.
Celtics country. Yeah. I remember as a kid in the 60s, you know, we'd have to go to bed early. On game nights, my brother and I would huddle in our bed. We'd huddle around a 2-transistor radio to listen to Johnny Most broadcast the Celtics, and the combination of Johnny Most broadcasting not just Bill Russell, but Sam Jones, Casey Jones, Larry Siegfried, John Havlicek, and a lot of other people who won lots of rings, inspired us to become basketball players. We sucked, but we had that the Celtics to aspire to, and by the time I got to high school, we played in the state tournament, and the I don't know, from the quarterfinals on, I think that we played in Boston Garden on the same floor.
Mm.
We lost. Everybody loses eventually, but yeah, good stuff. Good memories. About 10 years ago, when Ted Kennedy died, Bill Russell went to his funeral, and that it was a big surprise to a lot of people that Ted Kennedy and Bill Russell were friends, and the national reporter who carried the story identified him as Wilt Chamberlain.
Oh,
Well, what didn't he play for the Rams? All right. Thanks, Dennis. Let's see if we can find a Knicks fan here. Joining us from London, England, is not a Knicks fan, evidently, but is Frank Radis.
so greetings and felicitations. I think I mentioned here once before that my brother played basketball at Boston College, and Bob Cousy was his coach. Now, Cousy and Russell together were like the dream team in the 50s and 60s. And I lived in DC at the time, and would have thought that my team would have been a DC team. My team was, because of that, the Celtics. And I followed the Celtics, and I cared about the Celtics, and I've always thought a lot about Bill Russell, and it is a sad day. And thank you for sharing, Brent.
From the perspective of Seattle area in Washington, not the city, but the state, is Michael Markman.
As you, yes, it is a sad day. You know, there are certain giants when they pass and you open up any social media, everybody wants to talk about them. Everybody is sharing memories and stories, and obviously this is one of those giants. Just before coming on with the gang, I opened up Twitter, and I just kept seeing that same story forwarded and linked to by person after person. So clearly he touched a huge number of fans and people who aren't fans of the sport, but just fans of humanity.
Didn't Russell write for one of the papers in the Pacific Northwest? I don't remember which one.
I don't remember. I probably wasn't here then.
Okay, I don't know if it was in Seattle or Portland. Brent, you remember that?
No, didn't he head coach in Seattle though for a year or two or something?
Yeah, maybe, but I mean, but he was a columnist.
Wow, I didn't know that. No.
Oh, okay.
Let's Google it.
Okay, well, while you're Googling, let's round this out with from Palo Alto, Keith Cheer. Welcome, Keith.
Pleasure to be here. And I am the odd man out here because I have no recollection or memories or even third-party memories of this person, but he sounds amazing.
Well, that's how we feel about Manchester United.
I understand that's why I'm being so empathetic.
Okay, that's enough for a
Zing.
lower third right. I hate Zingbot, by the way. I don't like Zingbot. This is a Big Brother reference. Okay, so thanks all for talking about him. The words "Havlicek stole the ball" by Johnny Most ring in my ear. Those were the days. I hated the Celtics as well, but you couldn't really hate them because they were so excellent.
You know, back in those days, Johnny Most also broadcast the Boston Bruins, and there's a companion quote that not too many people know about, but it's worth adding here. So Havlicek stole the ball, and there was a very important Bruins game. I'm not a hockey fan, but very important Bruins game. I think the score was tied, or the Bruins were behind by 1 goal, and they took a shot, and it hit the frame, hit the post.
It hit the effing post.
It hit the fucking post right on radio, AM radio.
Really?
Oh yeah.
And Johnny Most was not a calm person. He'd be like, "It hit the post! It hit the fucking post!" like that.
That's one of the most famous calls ever. Because of that part there.
Well, the Boston in my world, Boston immediately conjures up Liverpool. Why? Because they're both Irish, strong Irish cores, and Celtics, of course. England scored. Celtics is clearly the Gaelic name. The Glasgow Celtic football team, which is the Catholic team with Irish origins, uses. So today, the owners of the Boston Red Sox also own Liverpool Football Club. So I personally hate them because they're the enemy. Just the way it is.
You know, I wasn't aware of it, but he was actually a neighbor of mine because he coached in Seattle and then retired to Mercer Island, where he had a big house and recently sold it. So
I thought he coached out there.
Yeah, he was in the 70s. He coached the Supersonics, or as we affectionately call them, the Sonics.
Or as we call them now, the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Wow.
You could call them the Hedgehogs.
I'm sure there are people that say good riddance.
All right. So what are we going to talk about today?
I want to know why you said at the outset that the first day of the end of the Republican Party. Did something happen, or is it just your ongoing analysis?
Well, it's not an analysis. It's more of a gut instinct.
I've been whispering in his ear.
Yeah.
Well, you know, it is the next day in the decline of the Republican Party, but I don't think it's the first day of the end of the Republican Party.
So there was a study that came out literally just before I came on the show that said that the Republicans were going to take the House with 230 some odd seats, which is, they only need 218 to run the House, and that's a pretty recent poll. I don't know about polls anymore. I do know that I feel the same way you do, Steve. It's just the tea leaves seem to be, sticking to the bottom of the cup and saying that it's the end of the Republican Party. Add that to Donald Trump burying Ivana near the first tee, and you've got some really heavy stuff.
So I saw two things about that.
You get a
One,
good tax.
and I haven't pursued the details, but there's apparently some kind of tax advantage to
Yeah,
him during it.
Of
Yeah.
course, there is.
But the other one was the other one was a quip that said he buried her on his golf course so he could cheat on her for the rest of his life.
Well, God forbid that he has to sweat on top of her body for the rest of his life.
Okay.
What I read
now
Yeah.
in effect.
Okay. What I read was that he did have the ground consecrated by a Catholic priest so that she could have a Catholic funeral, but that a cemetery, which this area on his golf course now apparently doesn't have to pay taxes. So
On the whole
I
golf
don't-
course?
that's the question that I didn't see answered. Is it because he had a large plot of land near the first tee that he dedicated for his whole family to be buried in? I don't know if it's just that plot of land or if it's the whole golf course. I actually have not seen that yet. Regardless, he gets a big hunk of land on his golf course because I heard it was many acres that he set aside to not have to pay tax on.
Well,
I don't know. I don't know why he needs a tax break since he doesn't have any real money anyway.
Does he pay taxes?
He doesn't pay taxes anyway. Yeah. Even if he owes him, he doesn't pay him.
So Nancy Pelosi is going to possibly to Taiwan. Anybody want to comment on that?
Well,
Is that a good idea?
there was
She
there
said that she was going to go to Taiwan. There was a lot of uproar. She pulled Taiwan off the table, yet is still making a trip to Asia. I bet she does a secret trip to Taiwan.
there was a 2-hour plus meeting between Xi and Biden in which they talked explicitly about Taiwan. And as far as one can tell, it was a cordial, mutual understanding kind of a meeting, not
Yeah, except for that particular subject where the Chinese president basically said, we'll bury you if you do that.
well, there was no accusation of doing anything. We should talk about Taiwan. I mean, how many people know the history of Taiwan and Chiang
Here's how
Kai-shek?
that works. We're right now talking about Taiwan. Let's continue to talk about
So
it.
who knows the history of Chiang Kai-shek and the Chinese Revolution?
At a high level. I mean,
Yes, at a high level.
Yeah, about 30,000 feet.
So any
Yeah.
objective assessment would tell you Taiwan is not a separate state. It is part of China. It's the failed revolution that kind of sought to save its ass when losing in the Chinese Revolution. So Taiwan isn't the moral high ground. It's the place the losers went to.
But
Yes, I
yet
mean-
they
The
you can
Chinese
say-
Revolution was generally a good thing because it was against Japanese colonialism.
You could say that about
Yeah,
the United States, couldn't you?
Yeah, but don't they the Taiwanese feel that they are a democratic country?
Well,
Because
just like the Protestants in Northern Ireland think.
Yeah.
But they're not. They're a breakaway. They seized land in a breakaway.
So the question is, so
We
the
a breakaway too.
Chiang Kai-shek and his defeated nationalists skedaddled from the mainland to Taiwan.
Yeah.
How do the native Taiwanese feel about their Chinese overlords?
It's a good question. I actually don't know. I don't know what Taiwan was before this happened. Maybe Dennis does.
That I don't know.
But I think obviously politically, it's very advantageous to blame China for being against a sovereign state and everything. So I understand why it happens, but you don't have to read very much history to question everything.
It's true, but you also, do you know the history of Hong Kong and the guarantees that the Chinese made to Hong Kong when the British gave it up, and what's become of those guarantees?
Well, you got to.
Those guarantees weren't worth much to begin
Yeah.
with. Simply
What
because
guarantees would those be?
Well, plus one
the
has.
British, the British had a 99-year lease that expired in 1997,
Yeah.
and all the negotiating you want to do won't change that basic fact. And whatever the Brits extracted from the Chinese is probably worth just the paper it was written on.
Except for what the Hong Kong people expected from the Brits.
Well, yeah, look, the Brits are not good actors, are they, in history? Even though I am one, and we like to paint ourselves, we are the kind of imperialist colonial overlords, and we did take Hong Kong on the lease, with guns pointed at China when it happened. So it wasn't exactly like we're the good guys.
Yeah, but
kind of like the Americans.
You were first, or the Brits were first, so they get held to I think a lower standard, simply because they had no precedent. The Americans, on the other hand, have the British for precedent and knew better, or should have known better, in a lot of cases.
So I'm interested in knowing what the new legislation as regards to semiconductor manufacturing might do to the gigantic semiconductor manufacturing company in Taiwan.
TSMC.
Yeah.
No.
And there's Foxconn as well.
Honestly, I think. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask, does anyone have any thoughts about what effect that could
I
have?
was just going to say, I think the American government is hedging its bets, simply trying to avoid a Chinese takeover of the semiconductor industry, lock, stock, and barrel, with an invasion of Taiwan.
Also remember, we're currently experiencing shortages of semiconductors. So it's not as though we're eating anybody's lunch by building up a capacity in the US.
My prediction is that Taiwan will never be invaded. The TSMC and Foxconn's biggest customers will be in China, especially coming from the Chinese electric car industry, which is huge. And that the economic synergies between Taiwan and China prevent any political fallout.
Well, those semiconductors, I would venture that the rest of the electronics industry, whether you're making television sets or refrigerators or microwave ovens, if you pile all that up globally, they have a really strong hold on that business globally.
The good news though is that chips have short generation cycles, meaning that while somebody might own the market today, somebody else could begin by building a chip fab that leapfrogs something and keeps going, and within a fair amount of time take over a significant part of the industry. I think that's the big thing that the Taiwanese have and the Chinese have, for different reasons, to worry about.
So the government's move would help that in America, for example. Yes, is that sort of the feeling?
The key is the chip industry is changing massively. There's a new technology called chiplets, and chiplets are where a single chip is made up of multiple chiplets, and each chiplet has a different function. That's what Apple has done with the M1 and the M2. It's multiple things happening on the same piece of silicon.
Mhm.
And chiplets are generationally rendering Intel very old-fashioned. And even Broadcom, which makes single-purpose chips, and Qualcomm, which tends to make single-purpose chips, are being rendered old-fashioned. And now, where's the innovation in chiplets? It's all over the world. I have a company that my fund invested in Cambridge, in England, that does, this is amazing, but optical connectors. So they have an optical chiplet that connects to an electric chiplet with transistors. And so you basically get optics coming into the chip, which so there's massive innovation, and it's all over the world, and chips are at a tipping point of becoming what comes next. And what came last is Intel, basically, and Broadcom, and a few others.
Yeah.
Wow, the optical has to increase speed going in.
Well, and the fact that you can put optical on the same chip as electrical is, I don't even understand how that works, but it does.
Me neither, but it sounds incredible.
It looks like this. I've got one here. So this here is an Ethernet port that plugs into an optical switch, and it's 10 gigabits. You know, the most Ethernet ports in your house are 100 megabits, some are 1 gigabit. This is 10 gigabits. You can get these all the way up to 100 gigabits now, and they cost $25.
What's on the other end? It looked like a USB connector.
It's an electrical connection. So you can get these for optics. This one is electrical, but the device it goes into is a switch that is built for optical, for fiber. So fiber and electricity kind of become hybrid. You can use both. So you can use your existing cabling in your house on a 10 gigabit network.
So when a optical fiber for your television is coming into your house, it requires an electrical connection to a hub that then splits it into something that your TV can read.
Yeah, so up at the top of my house, I've got an AT&T fiber cable that comes in, a tiny cable. AT&T give you a modem, and they build a thing in the wall where the fiber comes in, and that thing in the wall has an Ethernet out, which is electrical.
Right.
And it becomes a junction box that bridges fiber to copper. Because you can't redo your whole house with fiber. If you could, it would be better. So you need these bridges. Now, up until now, that's been in devices. What chiplets do is they can put that onto a chip, which in the past were always transistors.
Keith, is there much wired Ethernet in home construction? I thought it was all Wi-Fi now, and
no, I think
5G.
Well, it depends how tech savvy you are.
Right. So I understand. I know people who have a lot of wires in their homes, but I wonder how prevalent it is.
I think it isn't prevalent for less technical people, because now the Wi-Fi it's got to Wi-Fi 6 now. Wi-Fi 6, I've got Wi-Fi 6. You can get, but none of your devices are Wi-Fi 6. Even the most up-to-date devices are Wi-Fi 5. So the most you can get on Wi-Fi is about 600-700 meg realistically. And if you can get gigabit into your house, you're not going to use the whole gigabit with Wi-Fi. But with cable, I've got, it's called Cat 5, which isn't really built for 10 gig, but it works. And my house was built in 2011, 2012, and I put wired cable into it because the Wi-Fi wasn't yet good enough, especially if you have lots of devices.
So why did you get this thing that you can't plug into anything?
No, I can. I've got switches. Here's one. So,
but when you said that you didn't have any
this is a 10 gigabit switch that this plugs into. These ports are blanks. You can put a fiber connector or an Ethernet connector into there. They both work. And depending on what your cabling is, it'll work. So
That's in your drawer, though. What are you actually using that for right now?
Well, I've upgraded to a better one. So this is 2 years old. So it's in a drawer because I don't use it anymore. By the way, it's made by a company called MikroTik. It costs less than $100, and these are all 10 gig. And you buy it on Amazon, and it's made in China, and there is no American product even close to it.
Now, how would a regular person use that?
You just replace your normal switch with this.
Right.
And what does that buy you?
But by the way, and if you go to where your line comes into the house, you put a 10 gig switch there, plug it into your modem, you'll get 10 gig network in your house, not 1 gig. So a 10 gig network in your house makes a massive difference.
Yeah. As long as you got
Sounds
yeah. Like
sounds like I need that. Like I don't need the Google Wi-Fi mesh anymore, which, by the way, I actually threw away last week.
And what did you replace that with?
So now you do this. I plug that in, and I can plug that in, and basically now you've got 10 gig, whereas before you had 1 gig, and this costs you $79.
And
I'll look
have you
at-
done that? Have you done that?
Yeah, my house is 10 gig. Every single room has 10 gig, and then I put one of these in the room, and basically each device gets its own 1 gig that doesn't fight with each other. They all get their 1 gig, and this has 10 gig to the exit to the house.
To answer your question, Michael, I just got bigger, better, faster
Okay.
stuff.
Well, and it's also good that these latest MacBooks actually have 10 gigabit ports.
Yeah,
Because-
they do. Yeah, I've got a Mac Studio here, and it's connected at 10 gig.
Yeah.
So if I want to pull video from a hard drive in another room, it's kind of instant.
This sounds like that guy, the science guy. What was his name?
Bill Nye,
Bill
Yeah,
Nye.
Bill Nye, right.
Well,
because he's the
it's a-
science guy. It rhymes.
the little known fact here is that I'm a complete geek, and I used to be this.
That is not the little known fact.
On this
know.
call, it's
That
well
is
known.
not the little known
It's well hidden, well hidden.
Wow, who knew?
fact.
I thought you were just another pretty face.
It's
Okay.
funny. I can tell you when I built, I was the CTO at EasyNet, and EasyNet was the first ISP in Europe, and so no one had built an ISP, so you had to kind of figure it out. I bought a Sun Microsystems box and a modem rack that required something called radius authentication, and then a thing that terminated ISDN lines and let people dial up. And for the first 6 months, we had to, every time somebody logged off the internet, we had to physically turn the power switch on and off because I couldn't figure out how to terminate the call in software.
Was that the time? Was Bill McNeely the CEO of the company back then?
Scott McNeely.
Scott McNeely. We had him come and speak to us at the very, very beginning of GE's involvement in digital, and I felt like, oh my God, this guy is God. He was just a genius as he explained how and what Sun Microsystems was doing. We all sat there enraptured by this guy's thing. It was really something. I couldn't have been more impressed.
Yeah, and now Facebook owns the land that he lived on.
He does, yeah. That whole campus used to be Sun, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sun and Next were very close to each other, actually. The Next campus was just a bit further along. I remember visiting there when before Next went back to Apple.
So what do we think about the situation with Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter? Who are the other players? So,
Instagram.
Instagram.
TikTok. Yeah.
You mean everybody trying to become TikTok?
It's fascinating, isn't it? Did you see the Instagram guy announced that they were going to move the Instagram feed to algorithmic, and all these stars objected, and
Kardashian
The
push.
Kardashians were powerful in that change.
they said make Instagram again. And they're back down. Instagram back down. And then Zuckerberg, in a private meeting, said that by, I think he said 2023 or something, 60% of Instagram will not be your friends' pictures. So it's almost like he's abandoning the core. It's the most transparent yet of him chasing money, not having a vision that he sticks to. I mean, in the past,
Is he saying that it's going to become video centric?
video centric and algorithmic. Like,
But you know,
what you'll find interesting, not who your friends are.
back in the old TV days, the job of television programming executives was audience flow, and it's, you know, through scheduling shows and through promotion, you tried to hope that if someone tuned into your network, they would stay there from every half hour to the next half hour to the next hour to overnight. And that's still the job of programmers. It's just turned to algorithmic. Once you tune in, you just hope that you can addict people to not tuning away.
One of the things that we tried to do at NBC was to make the spaces between the shows seamless. So
I remember that. That was a big innovation. It would cutting out the station breaks,
yeah.
and then gimmicks like starting shows a little bit early, so that people or so they wouldn't tune away. They wouldn't have the opportunity to.
Yeah.
And you remember what was Larry Sanders' show? No flipping.
That was a commercial. That part was a Jeff Zucker idea, which was changing the times that the shows were on, but the marketing department, the promotion department, were the ones that came up with the suck back, so that a show could continue while a commercial lived around it. It pissed off all of the advertisers and all of the local stations. Yet it worked, and it was a very big story. It was as close to our effort to try and become, future forward thinking marketers / programmers that we ever got. However, that doesn't exist anymore. The suckback does.
But the principle does. The principle does. Yeah. In TikTok is just doing that on a minute by minute basis.
Yeah. Well, you can certainly flip from one cat video to another.
Right.
Okay. Like I do.
I get the real thing.
Yes, you're lucky.
Real actual cat?
I have cats.
Not
KATZ.
I see. Okay, well,
they must be sleeping now.
But
what will happen when every media platform is TikTok? Then
that's where we are right now. That's that was the subject of my question, is when you have everybody doing TikTok, okay, now what?
Well, I put a piece in the feed this morning from Russ Douthat at the Times. The title of it is "Can We Resist the Age of the Algorithm? To resist our culture needs less Netflix and more Miranda Priestley." It's a short read. It's worth taking a look at. And I think.
What is Miranda Priestley? What is that reference?
What the reference is, we need to be fed less of what algorithms tell us is going to be important and make up our own minds. And that's what her reference is about. I think it's worth taking a look at. I think it's actually, if it's possible for the Republicans to implode, it's possible for the algorithms to follow them down the chute.
Well, the one thing you have to say, just to think aloud for a second, is TikTok, for those who have not taken it off their phone because they're combating addiction, for those who are actually addicted, it's very compelling. It's entertaining, it's funny, it's bottoms up talent, so it's not packaged stars. It's refreshing for that reason. So there's something absolutely wonderful about TikTok. That anyone that uses it almost can't stop looking at it because it's so good at what it does. But of course, it's at the same time inane, as in it's just entertainment, and the percentage of your time that now gets sucked into entertainment as opposed to anything else you might be doing grows disproportionately with the addiction. And so it is really, really good. And I have yet to see anyone other than TikTok produce. Now, if you go to YouTube and you look at those shorts they do, or Facebook now where they have the watch icon and you get a TikTok-like stream, they're nowhere near even close to how good TikTok is. So there's something amazing about TikTok.
Brent, what do you think about the quality of data and how that relates to the value of TikTok or of, Facebook basically copying them?
I don't know. I watch a lot of YouTube stuff, and hey, look, they got algorithms too, and those algorithms are pretty good. I mean, I've been watching a lot of. Somehow I got on this kick on watching. There's this series apparently that somebody in the BBC did like 30 years ago or something. It was like the fastest men in the world from. And it's all Olympics basis. It starts in 1896 and it goes all the way up to 1984 with Carl Lewis. I watched one or two because I've been really into this this phase of looking at Bullet Bob Hayes videos. I don't know how many of you know who Bullet Bob Hayes was.
Fastest man alive.
Fastest man alive, 1964 gold. He ran like the fastest leg of a 4x100 ever. And this is 1964. And then he became a cowboy and changed kind of the position of the wide receiver. Anyway, I was watching a lot of his stuff. And then all of a sudden, YouTube, starts feeding you. And next thing you know, I'm watching like Jesse Owens and I had no idea that Jackie Robinson's brother came in second in the 1936, gold Olympics 100 yards. And, I had no idea that Jesse Owens's name, not even Jesse Owens. His real name is like, his initials were JC. And when he was a little kid, the teacher asked him what his name was, and he said JC. The teacher thought it was Jesse, and the kid was so nice. He never said, hey, no, you got it wrong. So he kind of liked Jesse. So they ended up being Jesse Owens for crying out loud. So anyway, I'm learning all this stuff, and it's a lot of it is algorithms because I wasn't seeking this stuff out, but it was fed to me and I kind of liked it. But I think like everything, you got to have some moderation. You can't just sit there watching videos all damn day. You got to be able to. You got to be able to, step away from the algorithm at some point.
No, you can't.
You got to have some self-constraint, right? So you can't blame it all.
No, you don't.
So I don't know. I'll tell you one thing I have gotten. I spent last week looking at the earnings reports because you hear about inflation is gone crazy. Interest rates, at 75 basis points the last two meetings or whatever, recession fears. So you're looking at, well, what's going on? Is the economy like getting ready to sink or something? And then you look at the earnings reports from Apple and Amazon. I guess now you can't really treat those two as barometers for everybody, but damn, I looked at this thing. Apple still made, I know they were down like $1 billion in quarterly profit, but they still made 19.6 billion in profit, and over 80 billion in quarterly revenue. And Amazon, Amazon, everybody was so surprised at how well they did. Their stock price shot up 10% over in one day. And when a stock like Amazon goes up 10% one day, that's a lot of money. So there's a lot of gold in some of these transcripts. Like Amazon spent 60 billion in annual R&D last year. Infrastructure, technology, content. Apple made 19 billion in services last quarter. Not selling devices, just services. So there's a lot of stuff going on. And if you just kind of stick to the overarching narratives, whether it's cat videos or recessionary fears, you kind of run away with those narratives. I think it's important for people to, dig in and do their own stuff and moderate and not get carried away with the stuff that's fed you.
You've mentioned a couple of very interesting things there. First of all, I applaud you for using the algorithm as an educational tool. First of all, second of all, it makes me think when you talk about how going down can actually mean up, because a lot of those earnings reports indicated that there was downward momentum, yet there was huge amounts of money being made at the same time. So it felt to me all along like down meant up. And third of all, it has nothing to do with what you were saying other than to be hooked on the algorithm. I have now seen every conceivable karate chop sake video ever made in the last 5 days.
The thing about these algorithms is they have hair triggers. Like I looked at 10 gigabit networks from a company called Ubiquity, which is an American company. And literally later that day, about a third of my YouTube suggested was all about that. So they're very fast to pick up on a micro interest that then they feed until you get bored, and then they stop doing it, and then other stuff comes in. Like I don't get coffee machine stuff anymore, but there was a moment before I bought my coffee machine where everything in my feed was coffee machines. So they are actually, YouTube is actually more of a hair trigger than TikTok, I think, in terms of what you're interested in.
Well, I also, my feed is filled with guitar stuff. I'll watch one guitar thing, and the next thing I know, by the end of the day, I've seen every Prince video ever made.
Oh, by the way, another stat, AWS on its own generated almost 20 billion in quarterly revenue. So AWS is an $80 billion revenue generating piece of the Amazon business.
Well, even more, AWS's profit last quarter was 5.7 billion. Without that, Amazon would have lost 2.4 billion.
Right.
Basically, they're subsidizing Amazon with AWS.
That's why I still think somebody is going to buy Netflix from the Apple, Amazon, Google, because they're the only ones that can literally print money and pay for this stuff and not have to be dependent on, making money with it.
Well, there's a lot of people on Wall Street that are cautioning the creative community, or that are cautioning the streamers not to spend as much money as they think they need to spend on creating content. I don't quite understand why Wall Street would do that, since it is the creation and the success of the content that will make whatever one of those streamers becomes successful. One doesn't seem to mean the other to me, but that's a story that broke just 2 days ago.
Well, so the optimistic kind of charitable view, I think, is we human beings want our needs to get served. Increasingly, the network is how we get served, but not solely. And we're going to time slice our time between friends, entertainment, news, sport, turning it all off and going for a meal in a physical place with friends. We're going to time slice. And the only way any of this becomes a problem is if you imagine it that it represents 100% of your life. As long as you're time slicing and it's serving you, then the world's never been a better place. I mean, I fixed my dishwasher last week plumbing and unblocking a pump from a YouTube video showing me how to do it. I mean,
Oh, there's no question. I've done that. Not that particular task, but lots of times, if there's something that needs to be done on the car or the house or an appliance, just turn to YouTube.
Yeah.
Someone will show you how to fix it.
You know, there's a new voice app that Alexa, or a skill that Alexa has now. It's a wiki how-to thing. So you literally go to your Alexa and you say, Alexa, how do I fix this dishwasher? And it then comes back and tells you how to fix the dishwasher, allows you to play it back, slow it down, rewind it, listen to it again, have it repeat a section. So it's interesting how utilitarian and pragmatic these wonderful tools have become.
So can I tell you the dark side of some of this though? Because that's just the way I roll. So I like watching Prince reaction videos. I think I've mentioned that maybe 1 or 100 times on here before. And of course, like Frank, you start getting fed all these different. So there, but as a rule, I really don't care who the reactor is. Some people do really good jobs, some don't. I just, for whatever reason, just like seeing people's first reactions to Prince. So I don't get really married to any of these guys. But some of these folks, can build up some pretty huge followings. So there's this one guy, he's been at it for years. I think he said he's done over 2,000 reaction videos. So that's just a lot. And I think he has like over 800,000 followers. So he put out I think he did a live stream last night. And the title of it is I'm over it, or on to something new or something. Of course, that kind of piques your interest. So apparently he gets on and he's talking about how he's so tired of people him not getting the numbers, or all the work he's doing making these videos only for them, copyright infringements, so they get knocked down, or he's not getting the numbers that he used to get. And so he's tired. He thinks people are taking him for granted. He's putting out all this great work, and either it's getting struck down or he's not getting the kind of numbers he's used to. And I'm thinking to myself, what an ass. He's not doing anything special other than turn on a camera, watching a video, and basically letting people see his reaction. He's actually acting like he went to med school, and did 4 years and 8 years and spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, to get his degree. And he put in all this hard effort, and he's not seeing, people aren't respected. I thought to myself, is this what we're raising? Is this the kind of people we're raising? People who think that they're actually doing real work by turning on a video camera and watching somebody else's work and commentating on it.
Wait a minute.
Well, look, it is work if it draws an audience. I mean, that's that's the measure of anything in entertainment: asses in seats, eyeballs on screens, and I think it's a natural trajectory for anyone who goes into showbiz.
They're in showbiz now.
Well, you get an audience, you get a following, and then people get bored with you. And you say,
well, here's the thing. This guy didn't realize. I guess he just thought, and then he was getting mad at other people doing the same thing he's doing.
What a whiner! What a whiner!
Yeah, no, it's such a whiner. He started off years ago. He was ahead of the curve. Less people doing it, more audience for him. Guess what? People saw him doing it. People saw him spending $50 to get a camera. People saw him just sitting there, not really having to spend a whole lot of time and effort and getting thousands of views. So they said, why not do it?
Politics. Sure, it's exactly the same thing. Look, we had 4 years of Donald Trump doing exactly the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. But it is very rare for anyone in entertainment to sustain a multi-decade career. I mean, how many people are the Rolling Stones or Bob Dylan or Bruce Springsteen or McCartney? You just can't do it forever and have the same kind of impact. But some people do. People managed to do it. Even Joni Mitchell came back and had a huge score last week, performing for the first time in 14 years.
Yeah.
It's still a rare thing.
both sides.
And a lot of people, now in the world of what they used to call user-generated content, imagined that they were working at the same level, and that they suddenly became last year's item, and they're a little disappointed.
The thing is, there's talent and then there's audience, and that they don't necessarily cross over. So if you look at Discord, the app Discord, which is the biggest community app out there, and you look at the crossover from Discord to YouTube channels, in any given topic, you're going to find a YouTube channel with millions, sometimes hundreds of millions of followers, where the audience is owned by people who are shining a light on the talent, not by the talent themselves. So there's a whole new middleman. What characterizes those middlemen is they know how to use the tools. Like Kara Swisher is one of those. Kara Swisher isn't the talent, although she's talented. She talks about Facebook, she talks about Google, she talks about the FTC, and she's good at using the tools, and she's got the audience. But but the thing that people are intrigued by is the stuff she's talking about. Not she's just good at doing it. So I think the digital world gives rise to a whole new class of interpreters, storytellers. The more savvy you are, the easier it is for you to use the tools to command the audience.
It's very meta. It used to be you could either see the show or be the show. Now you can be a kind of show that watches the show and is the show at the same time.
It's grand.
I did it when Dave Weiner organized the first podcasting conference at Stanford University back in, Steve, you'll remember the year, but it was 90 something.
No, I don't remember the year, but I know what you're talking about.
So I thought, God, I've got to get into this podcasting game, but I have no talent. What can I do? I'm not going to sing. I'm not going to. So Brent, you'll love this. I created a thing called Earnings Cast. I took every company earnings call and I stole it from the Thomson Reuters feed and re-represented it as a podcast. And every company's earnings call was now a podcast. And I sold hedge funds $40,000 a year subscriptions to a basket of earnings.
Excellent.
That is really
and I had nothing. All I had was a big copy machine.
Oh, what a great idea.
awesome. Well, there's so many people that would love to replicate what you did back then, and they are. It's the irony that gets me. This dude was really worked up. He said, "Look, I started out with the reaction, the movie reactions, and when I started getting less views than that, you guys told me I should try doing, reacting to video movies and stuff. So I did that, but I wasn't getting the views. I mean, what do you guys want me to do? Stop whining, basically? Get the hell out of here with this?"
Whenever you ask the question, what do you want me to do? This happens in startup land a lot. Companies go and pitch an investor and they listen to the investor's advice. And every investor has different advice. The minute you ask, what do you want me to do? You're lost. You have nothing. You have to do something and it has to be interesting.
Well, I'm glad that I haven't been trapped or addicted to any of this stuff. That's all I can say. It just strikes me as, I've got plenty to waste my time on.
Well, you've been doing it for the last 30 years with the Gillmor gang. So
Yeah, but not really.
I'm just kidding.
I mean, TikTok, I don't understand. I understand that it's addictive, but I don't understand what the end game is other than for Zuckerberg to try and copy it.
By the way, why don't we do some TikTok little moments?
Okay, good. You get started. We'll be right.
No, I said Tina when I said that.
Yeah,
Tina. Oh, look at that face. Yeah, right.
More work.
I got to admit,
Okay, TikTok, huh? Uh-huh.
I do not post anything from That Was the Week to either TikTok or Instagram, but every week I think, why do I not? I think the engagement and the audience is probably bigger there than anywhere else.
Yeah, but so what?
Well, because if
That's
you're
what
like
Miles
that guy,
Davis said.
if you're like that guy that Brett was talking about, that's where you're going to get the numbers. So stop whining and do it.
Okay. I won't be there. Sorry. Anything else? Dennis, anything that you'd like to talk about before we start to wind down?
No, I there's a thread in my head that's just not mature enough to talk about yet, but it has to do with the ongoing coarsening of society and
Of what? You broke up. I couldn't hear the word.
Coarsening of
of our society. It's
Oh.
just
our
I
society.
don't want to do it right now. It just seems like what Trump started, Elon Musk continued, and now Joe Sixpack is turning into gold, and it's just frustrating to watch. I was in New York this week and got a taste of it, and it's in some ways it's funny to see the different ways we are becoming a more coarse or a coarser society in the way we treat each other, and in other ways it's just it's kind of horrible to see.
So how does that dovetail with your optimism about the midterms?
My optimism about the midterms is much longer, goes back much further than what I'm seeing here, and hopefully what's bubbling up with regard to the politics is going to outrun the coarsening. I think it's quite possible that that the coarsening is largely coming from one vector, and maybe another vector is fighting back, maybe fighting back at the ballot box. I hope. I don't know.
I hope you're right.
I saw a very interesting fundraising appeal this week from I forget from who, but it listed 6 states where the Republican Senate incumbent was behind the Democratic challenger. It's still summer; it's quite early, but
And this is in the Senate or the?
in the U.S. Senate, Senate, yeah, there are a lot of people saying, "Oh, hey, look at that! I wonder what that means." And then,
Overall, small dollar donors are showing a huge flatness on the Republican side, even a dip, and almost a J curve on the Democratic side.
yeah,
I don't know if you read the post I put up on Substack, but I incorporated one of those charts, and it's really remarkable to see how much the Democrats are outraising the Republicans.
I'm the first
bad
on.
time.
I'm one of the first on the very small amount of money donated list.
But it's interesting that all of the polls are suggesting the Republicans are going to do very well still. I mean,
Yeah.
In the House, not necessarily the Senate.
right. But
You know,
I mean, the House has certain advantages which tilt towards the Republican, dealing mainly with gerrymandered districts. So it's much harder to read the House because you have to do it on a district by district basis, whereas for the Senate you can do it on a statewide basis. And in the Senate, the cities have much more pull. The cities tend to be more left than the rural areas, and because of the concentration of population. So on a statewide race, Democrats can do better than on a gerrymandered House race, which might be where they have a structural disadvantage.
Well, and the Democrats don't seem to pay as much attention to those local races as they do to the national races. Anyway,
I think that's changing this cycle. I think
Let me ask that question another way. If it's true that the Republicans are going to be taking away from they're going to bring to the states the ability to overturn the elections at that level. Why is it that the Democrats continue not to focus on local races?
Well, I haven't seen a lot of data to suggest that they don't.
I don't know. I mean, I see,
and I also think that what we're getting in the news media, what passes for news these days, is just rewarmed baseball statistics. The off-year elections always favor the out party. Well, yeah, statistically that's true, but that's not a predictor. It's not a predictor. And I'll tell you, and all you need to do is look at Dewey defeats Truman as your marker.
some of the reason to answer your question, Steve, has to do with it's much harder to go granularly into local regions, and national media does the easy thing, which is to look at what's happening in Washington.
I agree. It is much harder, but the question is that if they don't do it, then
but you don't know that they don't do it.
Why are we paying attention to it?
I hear that they don't do it. If I look at my local media market, when I occasionally watch TV, I see ads for local congresspeople. Those are the ads I'm seeing.
But I mean, this gerrymandering thing, it doesn't just spring up occasionally. It's an ongoing effort, which is very difficult to disrupt.
Yes, and potentially there's something even more damaging than gerrymandering, and that's the case that's coming up before the U.S. Supreme Court in the next term on the independent legislature theory. I don't know if you've been following that.
Well, you posted it, Keith. Can you give us the URL, please?
t.me/Gillmor gang.
Mm-hmm.
That's a Barton Gelman article on it, but it's been in the news ever since the Supreme Court said that they would take that case. Fundamentally, what it says is this: in the Constitution, it says that the state legislatures can control elections. Now, in many states, there are state constitutional provisions that govern elections. And what this case is pushing for is the notion that there is no recourse for anyone to challenge a state legislature. So if state legislature decides these are the electors we're sending, regardless of how people vote, if that case goes through, then the state legislature is supreme in terms of declaring the electors. So the thing that Trump tried to do illegally becomes legal in 6 states, which are controlled by Republican legislatures, even though they are purple to blue in terms of statewide, governorships or statewide electoral votes.
Well,
Biden won 5 of these 6 swing states. But if the Republican legislatures in these states can determine the outcome, then it doesn't matter if Biden won them.
It has always been true that the legislature selects electors. They select 2 slates, and when the election is over, they say, okay, these guys won, this slate of electors goes forward. What's changed is the assumption that you can, in an ex post facto way, say, well, I don't care what the vote was, we're sending this slate of electors. That strikes me as something that is way far out there, orbiting the sun around Uranus.
or another body part.
Yes, but look at the Supreme Court we have now.
Did any of you see Chris Cuomo on Bill Maher's Real Time with Bill Maher on Friday? It was a fascinating interview. It's the first time Cuomo, I think, has been interviewed since he left CNN. He was very thoughtful. And in this area, he talked about the problem in America is increasingly neither party represents people. And the problem is the two-party system. And the mechanisms get focused on, but actually it's the lack of respect for the politicians that's the source of most of the problems.
Politicians need to do something that will make us respect them.
Yeah, and then he talked about the need for, he thinks that there'll be lots of parties, a bit like there is in Europe. Like if you look at the German parliament, it's made up of like 20 parties. Anyway, I thought it was kind of interesting that he focused away from the battleground between the two parties and more focused on why the two parties are equally held in disrespect by the people. And the normal narrative that Americans are stupid was flipped around into politicians are stupid and Americans are smart.
Well, that could be some very good research that inspires somebody to take a different tack and change things.
Did he mention any?
Our system.
Did he mention anything specific about the Andrew Yang party that was announced this week?
No, he didn't.
Because that's the latest attempt to try and break the two-party stranglehold with a third party. I think it's doomed to fail. People have been looking for multiple parties from time to time, almost since the beginning of the country.
Well, it feels like it's a reaction right now, and like an attempt at a quick fix, as opposed to something that has been well thought out and well planned out, and something that might take a few years to happen. And that may be one reason why it fails this time. But
it's also perhaps
in terms of failure. I don't think you should look at it in terms of failure, and I don't think you should look at it in terms of third parties. In the few instances where third parties arose in American history, they quickly eradicated the lesser of the two other parties. So I think what you might be looking at is the beginnings of a swap out of probably the Republicans.
That may be. It's very hard given the structure of the United States to dislodge a two-party system. And I think, Dennis, you're absolutely right.
I think Dennis is suggesting that we don't dislodge it, we just replace it.
That's right. So there's this transition period where there are three parties, and then one of the other parties withers.
Well, exactly. Transition is a good word. I think we're seeing a lot of transition states beginning in American life right now. If you look at what the Manchin Green Deal, whatever you want to call it, the $369 billion deal is, that is the legislation that puts an energy and transportation transition state into play.
Okay,
I'm glad you brought that up.
I'm going to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Snap poll. How many people think that inflation fighting bill, as it's called, or something like that, will pass? I want to see hands. The Manchin Schumer bill. So how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay.
Build back smaller. Or build back
smaller. But we've been in a desert since the first Build Back Better bill broke. Nothing has been happening. And a lot of the dissatisfaction you see, I think, is based on the fact that the Democrats weren't accomplishing anything. They were in a desert. The story was Biden's agenda is stalled. Biden can't do anything. Now, suddenly, if this passes, and I think it will, that narrative changes. And the notion that there's paralysis between the two parties disappears. And suddenly the Democrats seem to be a party that can get things accomplished.
And the Republicans will try to take as much credit for it as they can. I think a lot of Republicans understand that they're in trouble. And if they have to pass some legislation and look bipartisan in the process, that's what they'll do to win in November.
All right, Tina, you've been trying to jump in here,
Oh.
please.
Well, the prospect of a multi-party system has always fascinated me, and I never really understood why we only have two parties. I think it's pretty interesting what Dennis is saying, that maybe it's a swap out. There's a transition and there's a swap out of parties. But it would seem to me that if we could get one more strong party, it would create like a more of a competitive atmosphere, I guess, if for lack of a better term, where it sharpens the focus of the Democrats and the Republicans and gets them kind of in their lanes again, like actually doing what they're supposed to do. But my original question when I popped back in was, how would we ever go about getting multi-parties to actually exist and be forceful in this country?
Well, given the constitutional structure, you can have as many parties as you want, but they're going to have to consolidate down to a yes vote and a no vote. And if you do that, then I think the average voter loses some say in the matter, because there's all of a sudden this mechanism in place that trades votes among the various parties in order to get to one of those yeses or nos.
That sounds like
look at what happens. Look what happens in the Congress. A majority organizes the Congress. Now that majority might be a coalition, or it might be a single party, but someone has to become the Speaker of the House. Someone has to become the majority leader in the Senate. Someone has to become the chairman of the committees. And right now, that tends to favor the two-party system. So when you have people who are outside the two-party system, they caucus with one of the two parties. There are a number of people like Augustus King in Maine, who's not a Democrat. Bernie Sanders, who is not a Democrat. But they would have zero power unless they caucused with the Democrats.
Mm-hmm.
So that
Ted Cruz, he's not a Democrat either.
if you look at Germany,
what is Ted Cruz, Dennis?
if you look at Germany and France,
Ted Cruz.
He's a stain on humanity, basically.
He's a fraud.
if you look at Germany and France, you kind of get a sense of how things could be, because the rise of the Green Party in Europe, which is a minority party. But what happened is it captured the Green votes, which gets to between 5% at the low end and 20% at the high end, and it ends up being very powerful as a kind of a power broker. So what happens is power becomes less absolute, because you have to make compromises with various. It's a bit like the Democratic Party between its factions has to make compromises, but now it's separate parties with their own constituencies. If you watch Borgen on TV, it's a great case study in when there's more than two parties, and how it all gets sorted out. Now, the truth is the electorate definitely reflects more than two points of view. So what happens is all those various points of view in the electorate get channeled into a two-party vote, mainly because of power structures forcing that. But that doesn't really reflect the people at all. It's more of how the politicians organize it in order to get power.
Well, let's extend that, because of our primary system. It is the most radical on each party that tend to get the nominations, because the population as a whole doesn't vote in primaries. Only the most enthusiastic and fanatical party followers vote in the primaries. So that tends to make the nominees more radical than they otherwise might be.
Yeah.
So one path forward is ranked choice voting, where a a non with a plurality, but not a majority, you can't win that nomination if most people oppose you, because votes get redistributed if nobody gets an absolute majority.
Yeah.
So where's that going to happen?
Well, it's happened in a few places. It happens in New York City, for example.
State of Maine.
And it is being proposed in Seattle. There's a ballot initiative for ranked choice voting that's coming up in this fall's election.
Yeah.
Is ranked
And I don't know where else it's happening, but there is a boomlet for ranked choice voting going across the country.
Ranked choice means that if your first one doesn't win, your votes get allocated to your second choice. Is that what
That's right. You fill out a ballot which is not just one choice, but a ranking among all the candidates. So what happens is the person with the least votes is eliminated, and their second choice gets allocated. And then that keeps going until you finally have only two people left, and one of those people has a majority.
Well, that's how national elections are in France. It's called proportional representation there. UK has first past the post, which is a bit like here. So it's a two-party system. But
Right.
wherever you end up with proportional representation, you no longer have a two-party system.
We have first past the post here, but we don't call it that. We just call it winner takes all.
Okay, once around the table, last thoughts, starting with Brent.
So Frank put in the chat that Nichelle Nichols from Star Trek also passed away, which is another big loss.
Oh,
Yeah, I wasn't a huge Star Trek fan, but everybody knew Uhuru. And I kind of had a crush on her, although I was a lot younger, but so sorry to see her go. And there was a poll, there's this show on here locally on Sundays called the Georgia Gang. It's that political talking heads.
How dare they?
we're gonna have to talk.
Damn. Oh, man.
Yeah.
Lawsuit.
Yeah.
GG, huh?
But anyway, so they were talking about the latest polling here. And for the governor's race, I believe Kemp is up 48-43.
48 what?
43.
Whoa.
Yeah, I was surprised to see some of that polling. I thought that Abrams was doing much better.
Apparently she has some, ironically, apparently she's not polling as well as she needs to with Black voters, in particular, Black male voters.
Wow.
Is there any policy reason for that, or is it that she's a woman, or what?
I don't know.
She's a woman.
That's no doubt has something, a part of that, but I don't know. It's some weird stuff going on. And then in the Senate race, Warnock apparently is ahead.
Well, we got to get Trump into Georgia to stir things up.
He
Okay.
goes there, he'll get arrested.
Whatever, just do it. All right, Dennis, last thought.
I'd say halfway through the summer, things are looking moderately okay. I think we didn't talk about it, but the S&P 500 was up 9.1% last month. There's been a rally going on. The price of gas is going down. Paychecks are beginning to go a little bit further. Biden is showing additional life. There's some good political news coming. Excuse me. The January 6th committee is hitting on all cylinders. This ain't bad. This ain't bad. We've got time. We've got more time for this whole narrative to continue to evolve. And I like the direction it's going in.
100 days to the midterms. Michael.
I'm just going to endorse what Dennis said.
You approve his message, in other words.
I approve his message.
Okay.
Frank.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Dennis, yeah, I'm with you, buddy.
So you
100%.
approve of the approval.
I approve of the approval, so I approve Michael's approval of Dennis's message, but
Oh, we're getting
you know,
meta now.
we could have talked a little bit about Manchin and why he did what he did and what that means. I mean, we kind of talked about what that means and all of that, but it doesn't really matter because he did do the right thing. Thank God.
And finally, the guy from the UK.
I just talked.
I think we can't go without acknowledging the breakthrough that is represented by DeepMind being able to predict 200 million human proteins that hold the human body together and giving them as a freebie to medical science by publishing them all. And that is a British company as well, by the way, even though Google now owns it. I think it's amazing that they did that. It took them about 2 years pointing at that one problem to come up with stuff that no human being could have done.
Beware social networks bearing free gifts.
I don't think so. Not in this.
Is that part of the algorithm?
I just, I don't often agree with your partner, Andrew Keene, but I thought he made a good point there on your show.
Yeah, he did.
Which is that on Substack?
That was the week.substack.com.
Excellent.
And someone else is on Substack now.
Yes, well, the guy in at least my screen in the upper left-hand corner, Michael Markman, I finally baited him into actually rendering an opinion. So
And on Substack, no less.
yes,
Substack, no less.
It was,
Yay!
it was substantive, which you only, the first part of Substack is sub. So it was,
Which means under.
yeah, under what?
But this was over. Over.
it was excellent. He didn't answer my question, but
Well, what is your question? I can't understand
No,
your
I'm
question.
not-
And you
I'm
don't
just-
remember your question.
just trying to bait you again. Of course, you said that the last time. And I don't forget anything. I just can't remember
Everything.
No, I looked for your question on t.me/whatever it is.
It's there. You
I've looked at it and I
did
answered it.
answer that. Sort of. You
I
sort
did.
of.
I answered it specifically.
Okay, so now you're baiting me.
But I will
Congratulations.
I will say now that four of us have. Is yours on Substack yet, Frank, or have you kept to review?
No, I'm on Substack too.
Right, so
I
four
haven't
of us are now on
completely moved
Substack.
it.
Four of us are on Substack. Substack lets you do all kinds of collaborative things. So if you add together all of our audiences, it's probably substantive. We should think about how we leverage that.
Another word that begins with sub, huh?
Yeah, substantive.
Well, I doubt that Dennis is going to be on Substack
Subversive.
anytime soon. And
Yeah, that sounds very suspicious to me.
So it's subversive, Dennis.
Ooh.
well, isn't it Massachusetts where they call it the sub shop?
That's New York.
No,
No, we call it-
That's
it's definitely Massachusetts. They're in Waltham, down the street from
everywhere, Steve.
high school. Was
Sub
the
shop.
Where do they
sub?
call them hoagies? Is that Philly?
Yeah.
Really, yeah, heroes.
Yeah, just ask Dr. Oz.
No, that's
Right.
That's Jersey.
Yeah, let's hope Dr. Oz continues to do poorly. Thanks to Michael Markman. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks to Brent Leary. Thank you.
Ooh.
Thanks to Dennis Pombriand.
Thank you. I'm glad I was able to make it.
Yes,
I've
we
been
are.
driving a lot.
Thanks to Frank Radis.
Thank you. I'm glad I was able to speak.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it seems the voice starting to hold up.
Starting to.
That's good to hear.
I'm still waiting to find out what the heck is wrong, but it seems like it's getting better.
Working itself out.
Yeah.
And thanks to Keith Shear.
England women are now European champions. They won 2-1.
Did they win? Did
Yay.
2-1.
how they won, or there's still time left?
No, they won.
Oh wow, great! That's incredible.
Thanks
Go
to
Lion-
thanks
Lioness
to our
is-
producer and director, Tina Chase Gillmor.
Okay.
Hey, we should do a shout out to there's a couple of Doc Searles commented on Facebook, and our regular guy, Ian Waring, also left a few comments. So.
Yeah.
What did Doc say?
Doc was
China is more
commenting on
like-
Taiwan.
Yeah, China is more likely to grab Taiwan than Russia was to grab Ukraine. Repossession of the whole thing is much closer to inevitable. Oh God, I gotta say this part. Keith is right to say that Taiwan was Chinese possession, but very few living people remember that. The entire experience is in a relatively free and separate country. The question for the West is whether or not to resist the Chinese takeover. If it does, it will be very bad for everyone, but China is the way to bet in that war. Best to avoid it.
Yeah, I agree with
All
him.
right.
All right. So Nancy, good. Don't do it. ABC says, both of the people on the roundtable said, go ahead.
Is that the Australian Broadcasting Company?
Yeah.
All right.
I don't think Nancy's visit really will matter one way or the other. I mean, the dynamics are what the dynamics are. I don't think she's going to change anyone's thinking either in China or in Washington.
No, I don't think she'll even try, even if she goes.
I don't think that's why you do it. I think she's doing it as a way to. She's throwing a fastball up high, chest high, and inside.
To whom?
To the
Past whom?
Chinese. To the Chinese. She's sending the Chinese a message that they're crowding the plate.
Even if she doesn't do anything,
Wait,
that's
we
the
can't
message.
stop the show.
The scariest part of the future of the world is America not understanding that it can't dictate outcomes anymore. America thinks it can dictate the outcome of Taiwan. It is deluded, and any politician that goes there is, doing dangerous things.
Yeah,
Well, I think
that
that's a
you're
good
you're
point.
hoping that America thinks about history as something to learn from.
Well,
I mean, look at Vladimir Putin. Is he
hubris.
going through the same metamorphosis right now? He's being shown that he doesn't dictate outcomes in Europe.
it's the hubris that says, we're the greatest and we're the best and we're the most powerful. Of course, American military is way more powerful by many times than the rest of the world. But as we've seen in Ukraine, a powerful military doesn't necessarily stop you being in an ugly, dirty situation.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah,
The good thing
it's
about
a dangerous world, and something will or won't happen. ABC, not Australia, the great minds on their roundtable suggest, Susan Page, who's the editor of USA Today, she says, she wrote a book on Nancy Pelosi. She says Nancy's going to say something. So, we have said that in Ukraine that we're sending them certain material that Putin has said, don't do it. Okay. That's what that's about. Oh, and Doc Searles, referring to people who've been around long enough to remember stuff. Happy birthday. Okay. Thanks to everybody who showed up, and especially those who didn't. We'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. I'm going to stop.